Hey, thinkers, and welcome back to Thought Pairing. I'm PKD, and today we're going to be diving deep into a book that's been making waves in the personal development world. You're all about this one. Suchi, welcome back to the channel. You just finished The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris.
Thanks. It's great to be back.
So what's got you so excited about this book?
Well, we're constantly bombarded with messages about finding happiness, right?
Yeah.
Like everywhere you go, it's all about being happy. But this book flips the script and shows us how this pursuit of happiness might actually be the thing holding us back. It's a real perspective shift.
Interesting. Okay, so for our viewers who haven't read the book yet, what exactly is this happiness trap we're talking about?
It's this idea that happiness is this constant state of bliss that we can achieve by chasing positive feelings and avoiding negative ones. But life isn't really like that, is it?
Right.
We all experience a range of emotions, and the book argues that trying to force happiness can lead to more suffering.
That makes sense. I think we've all experienced that pressure to feel happy all the time, which can make us feel even worse when we're not.
Exactly. And that's where the book really shines. It debunks some common myths about happiness. For example, one myth is that happiness is our natural state. But, humans evolved to survive, not necessarily to be happy all the time.
So you're saying it's more realistic to accept that life has its ups and downs.
Absolutely. And another myth the book tackles is that if you're not happy, there's something wrong with you.
Oh, yeah.
But negative emotions are a normal part of life. We all experience sadness, anxiety, anger. It doesn't mean we're defective.
Yeah, I think that's a huge relief to hear.
Right.
It takes the pressure off trying to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. And this leads to another myth, which is that we need to avoid negative feelings to be happy.
Huh.
But the book argues that trying to suppress or avoid these feelings actually makes them stronger. There's this great analogy in the book about trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Okay.
You can push it down, but it'll just pop back up with even more force.
So running away from our problems doesn't actually solve them.
Exactly. It's about learning to approach those uncomfortable feelings differently.
So what's the alternative?
Well, finally, the book debunks this myth that we should be able to control our thoughts and feelings. The truth is, we have less control over them than we think. What we can control is how we respond to them. And that's where acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, comes in.
Okay, so ACT is the key to escaping this happiness trap.
Exactly. ACT is this powerful approach that helps us break free from the struggle of chasing happiness and instead helps us focus on living a rich and meaningful life, even with all its inevitable ups and downs. It's about taking action, not just thinking positive thoughts.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about how ACT works? What are the core principles that it's built on?
ACT has 6 core principles. The first is called cognitive diffusion.
Cognitive diffusion. It
Yeah.
sounds pretty technical. What does that mean in simple terms?
Well, it's about learning to detach from our thoughts. We often get so caught up in the stories that our minds tell us, believing every thought as if it were absolute truth. But with cognitive diffusion, we learn to see thoughts for what they really are, just words. Mental events, not necessarily facts or commands we have to obey.
So instead of getting swept away by every thought, we learn to observe them without judgment.
Exactly. The second principle is acceptance.
Okay, but doesn't acceptance mean giving up or resigning ourselves to a situation?
No, not at all. Acceptance in this context is about making peace with those uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. It's acknowledging their presence without resistance, without trying to change them or push them away. The book uses this analogy of making peace with a neighboring country. You acknowledge their presence, but you don't try to invade and change their way of life.
So it's more about coexisting with those feelings rather than pretending they don't exist.
Exactly. And the third principle is about being present. That might sound familiar because it's similar to mindfulness. ACT emphasizes being fully engaged in the here and now, savoring experiences, connecting with our senses, being mindful of our surroundings. Instead of dwelling in the past or worrying about the future, we learn to appreciate the richness of the present moment.
That sounds really challenging in today's fast-paced world,
Yeah.
but also incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it definitely takes practice, but the rewards are worth it. And this leads us to the fourth principle, the observing self. Have you ever noticed that even when you're caught up in negative thoughts and emotions, there's a part of you that's aware of those thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I'm watching myself go through those experiences.
Exactly. That's the observing self. It's this awareness that we are not our thoughts or feelings. We're the observer separate from the constant chatter of our minds. It's a powerful realization because it allows us to create this distance from those thoughts and emotions, reducing their power over us.
I love that. It's like recognizing that we're the sky and our thoughts are just clouds passing through.
Beautifully put. The fifth principle is all about values.
Values are important, but how do they fit into this framework of ACT?
Well, values are like this compass that guide us toward a fulfilling life. ACT encourages us to identify and clarify our values, those guiding principles that give our lives meaning and purpose. It could be anything from creativity, learning, adventure, to kindness, connection, service to others. Once we identify those values, we can then set goals and take actions that align with them.
So it's not about chasing happiness for happiness' sake, but about living in alignment with what truly matters to us.
Exactly. And finally, the sixth principle is committed action. This is where the ACT in ACT comes in. It's about taking action in line with our values, even when faced with discomfort or fear.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Precisely. And the beauty of ACP is that it provides practical techniques to apply these principles to our daily lives.
That's what our viewers are here for. What are
Yeah.
some of those practical techniques?
Well, the book goes into detail about how to deal with those pesky negative thoughts through techniques like naming your stories.
Naming your stories. Tell me more.
It's about identifying those recurring negative thought patterns and giving them a name. For example, if you constantly worry about things going wrong, you might call that your worst case scenario story. By naming it, you create some distance between you and the thought, making it less likely to control you.
So it's like acknowledging the thought without getting completely absorbed by it.
Exactly. And another technique is to use humor. You could try singing your worries in a silly voice or setting them to a catchy tune. It might sound strange, but by doing this, you can diminish the power those thoughts have over you.
I like that idea of using humor to kind of diffuse those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
It takes away their seriousness.
It does, and these techniques help us recognize that our thoughts are just mental events, not necessarily truths. We don't have to believe everything we think.
This is great stuff, Suchi. We're learning so much about handling those internal struggles we all face. But I'm curious, how does ACT approach dealing with those difficult emotions? We touched upon acceptance, but what does that look like in practice?
Well, one of the key techniques is something called expansion.
Expansion?
Okay, I'm all ears.
It's a mindfulness practice where you learn to observe your emotions without judgment, allowing them to be present without resistance. It's about creating space for those feelings rather than trying to push them away.
So instead of tensing up against those difficult emotions, we learn to relax and open up to them.
Yeah, you got it. It's like making space for a guest in your home. You acknowledge their presence, offer them a seat and let them be. You don't try to force them out the door.
That's a great analogy. It makes the concept of acceptance much clearer.
So the book breaks down expansion into 3 simple steps. Observe, breathe, allow.
Okay, I'm definitely taking notes here. Observe, breathe, allow.
First, you observe the emotion. Notice where you feel it in your body and what sensations it brings. Is it tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach? Just notice those sensations without labeling them as good or bad.
So it's about becoming a curious observer of our own internal experience. Exactly. Then you breathe, take slow, deep breaths, bringing your awareness to your breath as it flows in and out. Imagine breathing into that space where you feel the emotion, creating a sense of spaciousness within your body.
So we use our breath to create a sense of calm and ease around that emotion.
Yes. And finally, you allow, this is the key step, where you simply allow the emotion to be there even though you might not like it. You give it permission to exist without resistance. You don't try to change it, fix it, or make it go away. You simply let it be.
This allowing part sounds like the most challenging aspect.
It can be. Our natural instinct is often to push those uncomfortable feelings away. But with practice, you can learn to create a sense of spaciousness and peace around them. It's like allowing a wave to crest and subside naturally without trying to fight against it.
It's about riding the wave of emotion rather than getting swept away by it.
Exactly.
This expansion technique sounds incredibly helpful. A practical tool for dealing with those difficult emotions that can sometimes feel so overwhelming. But I'm curious, Suchi, what does the book say about finding happiness? I mean, if we're not supposed to chase it, how do we actually cultivate a fulfilling life?
That's where values come in.
Yeah.
Remember that compass analogy we talked about earlier? The book argues that true happiness doesn't come from chasing pleasure or avoiding pain, but from living a life that aligns with what truly matters to us.
So it's about living with purpose.
Exactly, and that purpose comes from our values. The book encourages us to identify those core values that give our lives meaning and direction. It could be anything from creativity and learning to kindness, connection, or adventure. Once we identify our values, we can then set goals and take actions that align with those values.
So values become the guiding force behind our choices and actions. It's not about seeking happiness for happiness' sake, but about pursuing a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
Exactly. It's about finding joy in the journey itself, not just in reaching the destination.
I love that perspective, Suchi. It's a powerful reminder that happiness isn't a static state, but a dynamic process of aligning our actions with our values. What are your thoughts on this, viewers? Have you ever experienced this sense of fulfillment when you're living in alignment with your values? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
We'd love to hear from you.
This has been incredibly insightful, Suchi. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the common myths surrounding happiness to the 6 core principles of ACT and practical techniques like diffusion and expansion. But there's so much more to explore.
Absolutely.
In part 2 of our deep dive into the happiness trap, we'll continue exploring practical strategies for applying these principles to your daily lives. We'll delve deeper into overcoming those obstacles that might be preventing you from taking action. And we'll discuss how to redefine success in a way that empowers you to live a more fulfilling life. Be sure to subscribe to Thought Pairing and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. See you in part 2.
Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into the happiness trap. So, we talked about aligning our actions with our values, but sometimes there's this gap between knowing what we value and actually taking action.
Yeah.
And that's where fear can kind of creep in and hold us back.
Fear is definitely a universal obstacle.
Yeah.
What does the happiness trap say about navigating those moments when fear threatens to kind of paralyze us?
Well, the book uses this really clever acronym, FEAR, to represent the 4 major obstacles we often encounter on this path to living a values-driven life.
Okay, I'm ready to face my fears. Break it down for us.
Okay, so the F stands for fusion with unhelpful thoughts.
Okay.
We get so caught up in those negative thoughts that tell us we can't do something or that it's too hard or that we're going to fail. Remember what we talked about earlier?
Right.
Thoughts are just thoughts. They don't have to dictate our actions.
It's like those negative thoughts are trying to pull us back into the happiness trap.
Exactly. The E stands for expectations that are unrealistic.
Okay.
We often set ourselves up for disappointment by expecting too much too soon. Right. We might think we need to make these drastic changes overnight, but sustainable change usually happens gradually, step by step.
So it's about setting realistic goals and acknowledging those small wins along the way.
Exactly. What about the A?
The A.
The A stands for avoidance of uncomfortable feelings. This is a big one, and we touched upon it earlier. Trying to avoid or suppress those difficult emotions only makes them stronger.
Right.
It's like running away from a shadow. It will always follow you.
Acceptance is key then. It's about acknowledging those feelings and making peace with their presence.
You got it. And finally, the R stands for remoteness from our values. This happens when we lose sight of what truly matters to us.
Okay.
We might get caught up in pursuing external goals or pleasing others, and we kind of forget to connect with those things that bring us joy and fulfillment.
So it's a reminder to check in with ourselves regularly to make sure we're staying true to our values even when life throws us curveballs.
Absolutely. The book has this really powerful analogy about this. It talks about being on a ship with a bunch of demons below deck, and as long as you keep the ship drifting out at sea, the demons stay hidden.
Okay.
But as soon as you start steering toward land, toward your values and your goals, those demons come clamoring up, trying to scare you back into the open water.
Wow, that's a vivid image. So how do we face those demons and keep steering the ship towards what matters to us?
Well, the key is to recognize that those demons, those fears, doubts, and anxieties are just thoughts and feelings. They can't actually hurt you. They only have power if you give it to them.
So it's about acknowledging their presence without letting them dictate our course. It's about continuing to steer the ship towards land, towards what matters to us, even when those demons are screaming in our ears.
Exactly. It's about being willing to experience discomfort, to feel the fear and do it anyway. The book emphasizes that willingness doesn't mean you enjoy the discomfort, but that you're willing to have it in order to pursue what you value.
This concept of willingness sounds crucial. It's about accepting those uncomfortable feelings as part of the journey. Is there an example from the book that illustrates this?
Yes. The book uses the example of climbing a mountain. You might not enjoy the steep climb, the aching muscles, or the shortness of breath, but you're willing to endure those discomforts because you value reaching the summit and experiencing those breathtaking views.
It's about keeping our eyes on the prize, on what we're ultimately striving for, even when the path gets rocky. I can definitely relate to that.
And that brings us to the idea of commitment, which is closely tied to willingness. It's about making a conscious choice to keep moving forward, even when faced with setbacks or challenges.
Okay.
It's about reminding ourselves why we're doing this, why it matters to us.
It's like renewing our vows to our values.
Yes. It's about showing up for ourselves, for our values, day after day, even when we don't feel like it. The book talks about how Mel Gibson was plagued by self-doubt while directing his film Braveheart. He constantly questioned his abilities, but he continued to show up on set each day doing the work despite those fears and doubts. And in the end, he created a masterpiece.
That's really inspiring. It shows that we don't have to wait for those feelings of doubt to disappear before taking action.
Mhm.
We can take action despite those feelings, and oftentimes taking action is the very thing that helps to diminish those doubts.
That's a great point. We often wait for the perfect conditions before taking action, but perfect conditions rarely exist. It's about embracing those imperfections and moving forward anyway.
So we've talked about facing our fears and the importance of willingness and commitment. What else does the happiness trap offer in terms of practical advice?
Well, it challenges us to redefine success. It goes against this conventional definition of success that's based solely on achieving external goals like wealth, fame, or status. It suggests a more holistic approach.
Okay, I'm interested to hear more about this. How does the book redefine success?
Well, it encourages us to redefine success as living in accordance with our values. It's about finding fulfillment in the journey itself, not just in reaching the destination.
That's a profound shift in perspective. It's not about waiting for those big moments of achievement to feel happy, but about finding joy and meaning in those everyday moments, in those small acts of alignment with our values. It's about recognizing that success isn't something we chase, but something we cultivate through our choices and actions.
You said it perfectly. It's about appreciating the process of growth and learning about embracing those challenges as opportunities for expansion and transformation.
I love how this idea of redefining success empowers us to experience success not as something fleeting or elusive, but as something inherent in the present moment. It allows us to celebrate the journey, to find joy in the everyday, even when we haven't yet reached those big, audacious goals.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we have, from what we're striving for to what we're already experiencing. It's about recognizing that fulfillment isn't something we find outside of ourselves, but something we cultivate within.
Suchi, you've given us so much to think about already. What are some key takeaways that our viewers can start implementing in their lives today? What are those small steps they can take to start creating a more fulfilling and meaningful life?
The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to those thoughts that hook you, those feelings that make you want to run and hide, and those actions you take to avoid discomfort. Notice how these patterns are playing out in your life.
It's like shining a light on those unconscious patterns that might be keeping us stuck.
Precisely. And once you've become aware, you can start to apply those ACT principles and techniques we've been talking about. Practice diffusion by noticing those thoughts without judgment. Practice expansion by making space for those uncomfortable emotions. Connect with your values and take small steps in a direction that feels meaningful to you.
It's about making those small, conscious choices each day to align with what truly matters to us. What do you think, viewers? Have you tried any of these techniques? Let us know in the comments below.
We're always eager to hear your thoughts and experiences.
Remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself. There will be times when you fall back into old patterns, but that's okay. Just notice it and gently guide yourself back to those principles and practices that support your well-being.
Absolutely. And you don't have to do this alone. The book offers lots of resources, and there are many ACT therapists and coaches who can provide support and guidance.
It's like having a Sherpa guide you up that mountain we were talking about earlier. Having a support system can make all the difference.
Exactly. And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Small, consistent actions over time can lead to profound changes.
That's encouraging to hear. So much of what we've discussed today resonates with the idea that we already possess everything we need to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into that inner wisdom and letting it guide our choices.
That's the essence of the happiness trap. It empowers us to take control of our lives, not by chasing happiness, but by living in alignment with our values, embracing the present moment, and taking committed action towards what truly matters. What stands out to you the most from our conversation today?
For me, it's the idea that we don't have to be victims of our thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
We have the power to choose how we respond, to create a life filled with meaning and purpose, even amidst challenges.
That's beautifully said.
It's been amazing exploring these concepts with you, Suchi. You've really brought the happiness trap to life for us today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And I really want to emphasize that, you already have everything you need to live a fulfilling life. It's all within you. It's about tapping into that inner wisdom and allowing it to guide your choices.
That's such an empowering message. We don't have to search for happiness outside ourselves. It's about cultivating it from within. And viewers, we would love to hear from you. What are your key takeaways from our deep dive into the happiness trap? What resonates with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Yeah, we're always excited to hear your insights and perspectives.
And if you haven't already, be sure to grab a copy of The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. It's filled with even more practical advice and exercises to help you apply these principles to your own life.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are looking for additional support, remember there are many ACT therapists and coaches who can offer guidance and encouragement along the way.
It's like having a Sherpa to guide you up that mountain we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Having a support system can make all the difference.
Exactly. And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Small, consistent actions over time can lead to profound changes.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
So much of what we've discussed today resonates with this idea that we already possess everything we need to live a fulfilling life. It's about tapping into that inner wisdom and letting it guide our choices.
That's the essence of the happiness trap. It empowers us to take control of our lives, not by chasing happiness, but by living in alignment with our values, embracing the present moment, and taking committed action towards what truly matters. So what stands out to you the most from our conversation today?
For me, it's this idea that we don't have to be victims of our thoughts and feelings. We have the power to choose how we respond to create a life filled with meaning and purpose, even amidst challenges.
That's beautifully said.
Well, Suchi, this has been a truly enriching conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been a pleasure being here, PKD.
And viewers, we hope you found this deep dive into the happiness trap helpful. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Thought Pairing for more thought-provoking content, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future uploads. And be sure to share this video with anyone who might benefit from these powerful ideas.
Yes, let's spread the knowledge and empower each other to live more fulfilling lives.
Until next time, keep thinking, keep growing, and keep pairing those thoughts.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.